Star Wars Jedi Survivor is the latest in a nearly endless universe of Star Wars games, a universe with incredible highs and some crushing lows, which is surprising considering the limitless source material. Now, the only surefire way to guarantee the game is high quality is to keep companies like EA far, far away. Crap. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is the sequel to 2019's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which I happen to think is one of the best Star Wars games in at least a decade, and one that I fully completed twice. This third-person galaxy-spanning action-adventure Souls-like platformer was developed by Respawn Entertainment in collaboration with Lucasfilm Games and published by EA for PS5, PC, and Xbox Series consoles. We'll likely never know exactly what led to the broken release, but things are in much better shape after some patches. So, after doing absolutely everything and completing this game 100%, here are my thoughts. In many ways, this game feels like Fallen Order, but bigger. The worlds are more open and expansive. The combat is largely the same, with a few notable additions. The force powers start almost identically to the way they ended in the first game, and are then developed from there. There are more options for traversal, both in terms of Cal's abilities, but also the addition of mounts. And yes, there's also fast travel now. The cosmetic options, well, let's just say they went a bit nuts there. And even the Uncharted meets Souls-like game design returns. So if you dug the first game and just wanted more of that, you're in luck. But if you were hoping for a big shakeup of the formula, you may be disappointed. For me, this is the foundation of a good sequel. Continue the story, expand the universe, and build on the gameplay from the first game. Now, with the horrendous launch performance mostly behind us, we can just focus on the game itself.
Like the rumors. The Jedi.
The story of Cal Kestis continues 5 years after the events of the first game, with his increasingly desperate fight as the galaxy descends further into darkness. This takes place during Order 66, in which the Empire relentlessly hunts down every last Jedi. And now that Cal is a full-blown Jedi Knight, he's a prime target and is struggling to stay one step ahead. The Empire's growing stronger and Cal needs to survive. Most of the characters from the first game have been disbanded, and while some return, other new characters are introduced. I liked how they were developed throughout. You'll make some choices that shape the story, but regardless of what you choose, this is undoubtedly a darker story that remains both personal, but also even grander in scale than the first game. Some story beats totally took me by surprise, and others had me cringing with how obvious they were. Ultimately though, this is a Star Wars story. You'll largely know where things are headed, and that's how Star Wars stories tend to go. Assemble your crew, find the MacGuffins, save the galaxy, you know, the huge. One thing to keep in mind as we jump into the gameplay is this is a Souls-light. It has a lot of the hallmarks of the genre, like limited health flasks, resetting the world at meditation points, having to get back to where you died to retrieve your experience, and even the way you open up new shortcuts as you progress. However, there's one key difference from games like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, and that's a difficulty setting. Yeah. From story mode all the way up to Jedi Grandmaster, you can see exactly how each difficulty setting changes things like enemy aggression, damage, and parry window, so you can really dial in exactly how you want to play. I'd say the series is a great jumping in point for anyone who's been curious about trying out Souls games, or if you found them frustrating in the past. But even for hardcore Souls masochists, you can just crank up the difficulty, and while it doesn't feel as punishing as some others in the genre, it's still a good challenge. And you can change this setting at any time without penalty. The overall structure feels familiar to the first game, having you planet hop, exploring a ton of diverse biomes, finding collectibles, completing puzzles, and fighting enemies. However, like everything else, this feels much bigger. And while the overall formula is the same, the developers have tried to do much more with it. This isn't an open world game. Most of the planets keep you on set paths. They may branch off, but you're still limited to those paths. However, there are now 2 massive planets that have more open design, one of which, Koboh, acts as your hub with a town-like area and even a base that you can customize. Lead level designer Martin Badowski said that Respawn wanted Koboh to feature a dense central area with more open outskirt areas as the player explores outwards. Traversal and exploration is not only encouraged, but has also been made easier through a number of improvements. First off, the Mantis landing pads are now more centrally located instead of on the far end of the planet, which makes it easier to branch off into each region. The meditation points, which act as your checkpoint system, allowing you to rest and replenish your healing items, upgrade your stats, and now also act as fast travel. This was one of the most requested features, so you can fast travel to any other meditation point you've already discovered on the planet. Keep in mind, anytime you use a meditation point, it resets the world, bringing back any enemies that you've killed, except for some select bosses. Lastly, you'll now have the ability to tame some resident fauna so you can ride them. Who's a good boy? Not only does this give Empire Strikes Back vibes, but it's just a cool way to get around. The map from the first game was a cluttered and confusing mess. It was often really difficult to see where you needed to go, what was walled off, missing items, and more. Even with the larger areas, I found the map in Survivor to be much easier to read and understand, with an overall cleaner design, more icons, and color coding to better communicate information to you. And by the end, you'll also have the ability to see any items on the map you've missed, which makes the completion process much easier. Scattered throughout planets are Jedi Chamber trials to discover, which have been compared to shrines from Breath of the Wild. And I think it's a pretty fitting description. Jedi Chamber trials have puzzles and challenges to complete, which will provide rewards such as skill points. Which takes us to progression. The easiest thing to do would be to have Cal forget or lose his powers and then gain them all over again. Oh no, Cal got amnesia for some reason. We've seen this 100 times before, but that's not the case in Jedi Survivor. Largely, you'll start this game where you ended the first game, with most of those same abilities, and then you'll expand from there. This means most of Cal's abilities feel like tweaks rather than wholly new powers. So on one hand, the power arc isn't nearly as steep, but on the other, this aids in the pacing and makes you feel powerful right off the bat. Cal's progression is pretty straightforward. As you kill enemies or progress through certain parts of the story, you'll gain experience points that you can spend at meditation points on the survival tree, the force tree, or the 5 lightsaber trees. Survival has what you'd expect, like increasing health, that sort of thing. The lightsaber and force trees are more combat oriented. There's almost a Metroidvania feel to some of the unlockables that you'll get throughout the story that opens up new traversal options, like gaining the ascending cable to reach far-off ledges. Eventually you'll unlock the perk system, which gives you slots to add various perks that you'll acquire through force shrines or trial chambers and more. These will change up your skills and abilities in ways both big and small. Koboh, as I mentioned, acts as your main hub. This feels like a western in space, which is kind of the elevator pitch for Star Wars. You can upgrade the cantina-like area by completing side quests, recruiting NPCs, they can join you back at the cantina, they'll give you quests, and can fill you in on rumors that will point you towards key items. Similar to the Mantis in the first game, you can plant a garden at the cantina, and fill out your fish tank and more, so that over time it's more filled in and feels more like yours as you progress. Now, customization is the foundation for the game's reward systems. So I hope you like skins. There were quite a few in the first game, with the ability to change your poncho, the paint job on BD1, or the look of the Mantis. But holy cow, has it been expanded in this game, like almost to a crazy degree. As you know, I love me some skins, but this is the #1 thing you'll acquire, and there's just an absolute ton available. Loads more outfits and ponchos, paint jobs, and even the ability to customize Cal's hair and face. And of course, your lightsaber and blaster too. All of this customization helped me to feel invested, like this is my world and my adventure. But if this isn't you, if you couldn't care less about some new skin, the reward system will likely fall flat. And with that, let's jump into combat. The overall combat feels very similar to the first game, so if you like that system, you're probably going to be pretty happy. And if you didn't, this will disappoint you. It's a mixture of hand-to-hand lightsaber fights with light and heavy attacks, a block, a parry, and force powers, like the ability to push or pull enemies, create a shield, and even freeze enemies or projectiles in place. There isn't a stamina bar like in other Souls games. Instead, you have a block bar. It's represented by a white bar under the health for most characters. As long as the block bar has white, blocking will deflect some or all of an attack. Once that bar gets whittled down enough, it will open up to full damage. The biggest change to combat are the stances. While they were introduced late in Fallen Order, they've been expanded here. There are a total of 5 stances that change up the gameplay. Right from the start, the single blade and double bladed lightsaber stances return from Fallen Order. The regular single-sided lightsaber is the most balanced. The double-sided lightsaber is best for crowd control. The special dual-wield single-blade attacks from Fallen Order is now its own full stance that's built for speed. Eventually, Cal will add 2 additional stances to his arsenal, Crossguard and Blaster. Crossguard is an upgrade to Cal's lightsaber that's somewhat like Kylo Ren's in the sequel trilogy. This stance is most powerful, but it's balanced with slower parry and block timing. Lastly, and maybe the most surprising, is the Blaster stance, allowing Cal to wield both a blaster and lightsaber. It's surprising because Jedi rarely use blasters. However, this gives Cal a lot more range in his attacks than just when he throws his lightsaber with the Force abilities. The Force Unleashed was the first game where I felt the true power of the Force was represented. Jedi Fallen Order did a great job of showing Cal's growing power, particularly by the end where you were an absolute force of nature. Rather than just increasing his power with the Force, Jedi Survivor shows the breadth of his powers. So yes, he can do things like freeze blaster bolts to not just avoid getting hit, but also to pull enemies to their deaths, or throw enemies off cliffs, which never gets old by the way. But he can also now do things like Force Dash in midair that aids in both combat and platforming. Besides Cal's new abilities, different companions now also join him at various points in the story. Marin rejoins Cal, and Bo Dakuna, a new character, and this isn't just some escort missions. They're integral to the combat and traversal, with the ability to perform combo attacks with them. Overall combat feels a bit more polished than the first game. This was definitely more of a sanding of the combat from the original versus a major overhaul. It's impressive to balance battle encounters across a big game like this so they remain challenging at every step, but Cal's new adventure manages to do so, with a wide variety of formidable foes throughout that demand careful observation to understand their attack patterns and weaknesses. And the bosses are a culmination of the experience and skills you've learned that will definitely test you. As I mentioned before, I completed Fallen Order twice, once on my Xbox One and a second time with the current gen patch on my PS5, and I thought that game looked fantastic. It absolutely captured the Star Wars look and feel, but the last gen performance was a mess. There were frequent stutters and frame drops with lengthy load times. The current gen patch improved all of the performance issues, leaving you to appreciate the visuals and gameplay. Jedi Survivor was developed from the ground up, targeting the current gen consoles and PC only, so you'd think that focused development would have prevented any major issues. Well, suffice to say the launch was a complete train wreck with all sorts of issues. However, now that we have a few patches under our belts, I can tell you that the performance on my PS5 was pretty solid for the most part. You have both presentation and performance mode, and I was pretty much stuck with performance. There's no going back from 60 frames a second, and it still looks great. Awesome lighting, environments were at times completely breathtaking, absolutely showing the creativity and the skill from the team at Respawn, and all of the characters and creatures had a level of polish that really pushed the believability and immersed you in the galaxy. Adding to that immersion was the fantastic audio design, enveloping you in a soundscape that was totally unique for each environment.
Didn't expect to see this place operational after all this time. Stay alert.
The voice actors, unsurprisingly, were fantastic without a single weak link throughout.
What'd you find?
Myself.
And the music, of course, is pure Star Wars, with the quintessential John Williams score, with some new tracks that feel completely at home in this universe and also enhance each scene. Since my channel would be nuked from existence if I played even a single note, I found very similar alternative music to give you a sense of what to expect that you'll hardly notice isn't original. I think I nailed it. After finishing the story, you can continue to explore and knock out any remaining quests and finding collectibles, or start a new playthrough on New Game Plus, called New Journey Plus. This lets you start with all of your unlocked powers, skins, and even some new perks that'll allow you to change up how you play for the second go. Similar to the first game, completing this game and getting 100% is relatively easy. On a single playthrough, it'll take around 20 hours or so, with another 8 to 10 cleaning up any remaining collectibles, skins, finding secret areas, and knocking out quests. I wouldn't worry too much about trying to find everything throughout, since you'll not only have more powers by the end that'll help you get around more easily, but will also have the ability to see what you missed on the map, which makes the cleanup process, well, cleaner. What I love about the game is how it built upon so many elements from the original, without changing them to become something completely different. That's the foundation of a strong sequel in my mind. Refine, polish, and expand on what worked from the prior game. The presentation is top-notch, with the visuals and sound coming together to enhance the experience. The story is fun and exciting and will really pull you in toward the end. And the gameplay is tight, responsive, challenging in just the right ways to remain fun throughout. After all, there's very few things that'll make you feel more like a Jedi. Now, if you don't like cosmetics or were hoping for much bigger changes from the original, you may be disappointed. However, Jedi Survivor builds upon the excellent foundation laid in Fallen Order, creating a galaxy that is just so much fun and interesting from beginning to 100%. So, even with EA's involvement, and even with the rough launch, I highly recommend you check out Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Okay, well, you've heard my thoughts on Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and I'd love to hear yours as well. Also, what's your favorite Star Wars game? Let's talk about it in the comments down below. If you liked the video, hit like and subscribe, and if you want another great adventure, check out my video right here. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.